It's access to knowing that we are consistently and actually constantly free, and it's our minds that entrap us. I have been a prisoner of my own mind for so long. I was so fearful of commitment. I was so fearful of losing my freedom.
Welcome to Radically Loved Radio. I am your host, Rosie Acosta, yoga teacher and teacher trainer, mindfulness coach, speaker, and creative writer. I am also the founder of radicallylove.com, a website where you can go for more information about yoga, mindfulness, meditation, and lifestyle advice. On this podcast, we talk to people within our health and wellness community that are creating content through the ritualistic practice of yoga, meditation, or overall mindful living. We hope to create value in your life so that you can achieve your highest potential and live a radically loved life. To stay in touch with us, just follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Rosie Acosta and on Facebook at Radically Loved Rosie. You can sign up for our newsletter on radicallylove.com to stay up to date on future workshops, retreats, and latest podcasts. This podcast is brought to you by Organifi. Now you can sip your way to radiant skin with Organifi's new product, Glow. This refreshing superfood naturally boosts collagen, smooths fine lines, protects the skin from sun exposure and toxins, and naturally moisturizes the skin. It's super simple to use. You simply mix 1 scoop with 8 to 10 ounces of water, and you shake it and you drink it. And in natural Organifi fashion, it's got such incredible superfoods like aloe vera, pomegranate extract, lemon powder, coconut water, rosehip powder. All of these ingredients are going to help build collagen naturally using nature's most potent superfoods. Taking care of my skin has become something so important to me, not only because I travel as much as I do, but because I know that we are what we eat. So head over to organifishop.com/products/glow so you can get your Organifi Glow pre-sale free shipping that ends in 1 day. So you can either go to the info button of this particular podcast and go directly to the link, or go to organifishop.com. That's ORGANIFISHOP.com/products/glow. And now back to our show. Steph Sifandos is the true vision of what a conscious man should be. Through his own transformation, he developed a deep understanding of relationships and realized he had to move from selfishness to selflessness, a lesson he passes along to others through his work today. He's a motivational speaker, an author, a coach, and truly one of the most real and authentic men I've met to date. We had such an incredible conversation. We talked about everything. Mental patterns, we talked about ritual, we talked about relationships. I'm so excited for you to hear all the wisdom nuggets that he left for us. Here is Steph Sifandos. So I can't stop smiling already. So I'm really excited to have this particular guest on this show. Number one, because I needed to fulfill my men quota. Listeners, I hear you. And the man that's on today, Steph, he's one of my favorite men out in the world of self-development and just conscious living and entrepreneurship. He is one of my most favorite inspirations to look up to in this category. So I'm really excited to have him on. So if we could all welcome Steph to the show.
Oh, what a humbling introduction.
Oh, I try. I'm so excited. So Steph and I met Steph, when was it? A couple of months ago?
I think it could have been late last year before Christmas.
Was
Dare
it
I say?
before Christmas?
I think so, yeah. Dare I say
Wow.
it was, yes. Time is this is an interesting time of the year. It's we're already in April, pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm really in shock. So we just started the conversation before we started to record. We were talking about one of the things, my intentions, right? I'm doing air quotes before the end of the
Air
year was
quotes.
right for me to travel less and to be at home more, which hasn't happened. It's April essentially, and that hasn't happened for me, but that's okay. things happen, life happens, and which is actually apropos to what I wanted to talk to Steph about. Um, because he has so many great insights and wisdom with regard to creating a life of joy and success and happiness. And I'm hoping that you will share those wisdom nuggets with us today.
Yes, I'm very excited to share anything and everything.
Okay, Steph, first of all, tell everybody where you hail from, where the accent's from.
I hail from Perth, Western Australia, precisely Fremantle, Western Australia. However, so I was born in Fremantle. I grew up in so Western Australia. Fremantle, Western Australia is Perth itself, which is the capital city of WA, is quite an isolated city. In fact, it's one of the most, if dare I say, the most isolated city in the world in terms of the size of the city and where it's located. But I also grew up in Greece. My father's Greek, my mother's Italian. Grew up in Greece, came back to Australia when I was about five, I believe, five-ish, and then would be back and forth from Western Australia to Greece because my father's family is there and
Yeah.
my family's there. So I have the best or the worst, but I have there's something of both worlds in that sense, both cultures. Yeah.
Well, I love so you're Greek Italian with a West Australian accent.
Yes, you could say that. Yeah.
That's awesome. I was just telling Steph how I want him to record some meditations because I love his voice, and he just told me that he has some. So hopefully he's got them somewhere that are accessible for everybody to download.
Absolutely, I do. Yes.
Okay, great.
Very
So
much so.
so here's my question, and this is something that I do remember having a similar conversation at dinner, and I found it really fascinating, and I think it's such an important topic, especially where we are in this day and age with regard to cultivating sustainable and healthy relationships, right? So there's this idea of building a conscious relationship with our romantic partner or
Mhm.
conscious relationships with the people our coworkers or our family members. And because I really love your point of view on this, I'd really love to just hear from you what, number one, the definition of having a conscious relationship, and number
Mm.
two, how you've been able to cultivate that in your life, in personal life and in business.
Yeah, I'll start with it. That's a great question. I love this question. I'll start with a simple definition, but I think it's a simple definition. I think yet so profound when we really peel it back. And so, for me, two people that are in And so, just to caveat something, I'll reference a normative heterosexual relationship here often, but please know that I'm speaking to any dynamic of relationship, any form of gender construct. Just fill in the gaps. It really doesn't matter. It's when two people, again, if you're in a non monogamous relationship, it could be three, four, five people, or if you're in a corporation, it could be thousands of people. But essentially, what underpins a conscious relationship is that the two people that are involved in that relationship know that the blue sky is always there. So there may be some clouds, maybe some grey clouds, some white clouds scattered throughout the sky. There could be rain, there could be thunder and lightning. This could occur for days on end. Yet they know that the blue sky will always be there. And so what does the blue sky represent? The blue sky represents the true form and the true nature of the relationship. And if we look at a blue sky, we see stillness. We associate a blue sky with peacefulness. We associate a blue sky with feeling placid and calm. And so at the core of any conscious relationship, no matter how turbulent it may be, because that's life, that's going to happen. That's definitely going to happen. There's this fallacy that people believe, that people think that if you're in sacred union or in a conscious relationship, that everything's easy, everything's just so simple. There's no distress, there's no pain, there's no arguments, there's no disagreements, there's no fighting, there's no yelling at each other, there's nothing. Now, obviously, the more intense all of that is, the more work those people have to do in terms of going deeper into their shadow self, into the unchecked parts of the psyche, into
Mm-hmm.
the quote unquote ugly parts of self. But we're always going to have disagreements per se. That's just part of life. It's how we handle ourselves. It's how we
Mm-hmm.
approach that defines a conscious relationship. So people in conscious relationship know that that blue sky is always there. So when they're in the turmoil, they can reference that. It gives them a greater sense of peace. It gives them a greater sense of understanding what's happening, connecting to the wisdom and the teaching of what's happening and the unraveling of what can occur, the growth and the expansion, as opposed to being stuck in the pain and the fear and coming from old wounding. A conscious relationship chooses not to come from old wounding that has nothing really to do with the present moment besides its infiltration of the present moment. And it chooses to come from what's happening right now. Now, that's a simple definition for me. I'm very happy to go into a more, not complex, but more layered definition, if you
Mm.
wish.
Yeah, no, I really love what you're saying, and I think that it's such a beautiful way of creating awareness around our own perception of what we think a relationship should look like, right?
Mm,
Um,
mm,
I love what you're saying about how the blue sky is still there. I
mm,
find that with certain people, especially as I do life coaching and I work with a lot of my students, and I have encountered where, and I'm sure you have too, and I'm wondering if you can weave this in to elaborate a little bit more.
mm.
When people have a hard time believing that the sky is still blue,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like they might feel like, I just don't know if I'll put it in the sense of, I don't know if I'll ever find love again,
yeah.
or right now this feels like I'm dying inside.
Yeah, yeah. I've been there. I feel so many of us, if not all of us.
Mm,
I'm very confident to say that all of us have been there. Very, very few
yeah.
people have not at some point in their life. I've I've been there, Rosie. I've been there at the point of suicide many times, and looking at suicide as a tangible option for not only ending this pain, but also putting a stop to the pain that I'm causing or inflicting, perceived to be inflicting upon others that are seeing me in this state of deep, deep distress. Because we project forward, wow, is this pain going to be here forever?
Mm-hmm.
And when we're asking that question, or when rather we're feeling that that's absolute truth, we are coming from an unconscious place. We're coming from a wounded place,
Mm-hmm. Mm.
deep, deep wounding. Now, there's nothing wrong with coming from wounding. This isn't about wrong or right. It's a beautiful thing. But when we get stuck and fixate on that wounding being the norm and being forever, we're very mistaken. Because here's something to really tie that up. When we go to sleep at night, and you may understand this, obviously being in the space that you're in. Vedanta speaks to three states of consciousness, or four, but let's just focus on the three states:
Mm-hmm.
a waking state, the waking state, the dreaming state, the deep sleep state.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we just take that and we go to sleep at night, we go through a state of being in a dreaming state, and then we go into this deep sleep state where consciousness or our awareness of our pain, it ceases for a moment or an hour or two or three. And so that there tells us something about our reality, that it's nothing's permanent. There's only one thing that's permanent, and that is the ultimate self, the true self. But to not go too deep into that philosophy for a moment, if we just stay with that, if we just understand that we even can find reprieve during our 24-hour period.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we can do that, then imagine what we can do if we look at the circumstances differently. For me, I was so caught up in my pain. I got so stuck in my pain instead of asking, why is this happening for me? I was asking myself, what is happening to me? What is happening to me? Why is this happening to me? What have I done? I got locked down in this victimhood mentality and
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't break free of it. And I needed someone else. I needed other people to reflect on me to say, hey, Steph, there actually is a way through this. And here are some options. And here's how fucking amazing your life actually is. But you're not able to notice it because you're in so much pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so this fixation on our pain being the be all and end all, and this inability to be in gratitude, it devastates our psyche and it devastates our sense of self and our well-being. I've been there so many, many times. And I'm also deeply grateful that I've experienced that in my case because I've learned and I've grown from it massively.
Yeah, yeah, and
I've allowed myself to.
it sounds like you're really coming at it from a place of gratitude, right? Even in your suffering, you
Mm,
personally are still coming at it from a place of awareness.
yeah.
And I think, well, I'm curious how much of our faith or belief system is tied into that, like that hope finding?
I think it's. I'll give you an example of today, actually, too.
Okay.
That will be quite interesting. I think there's a difference between hope, blind hope, or blind faith, and intelligent hope. And I think blind hope and faith comes from pure desperation, and it's not grounded in anything tangible. Whereas intelligent hope is there's a willingness to understand or see or witness or feel something that we're unaware of and venture into the unknown with more of an open mindset or open eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for me. There's a willingness there in the intelligent hope. So, for example, I've just been a little bit overwhelmed the last few days, just life in a really healthy way, in a great way, in terms of the way I'm serving, the way I'm showing up for the people that I work with, the amazing creative projects that I have on. Like, I feel really blessed, very, very blessed. And it's been overwhelming, and it's been more quote unquote work and service, and there's been a little bit less time for space, a little bit less space and time for fun and play and just detaching from having to do so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I know myself personally because I've ventured into virtually every chasm of myself, and there's obviously more. There's definitely more, but I've been deep and dark and light as well. um, and I know when I get like this, I start focusing on what's not working in my life, and
Yeah.
this is a habit that I'm breaking. And so, for example, I'm away from. I saw a video yesterday of my good friends that I used to train with every day. We would move, engage in movement, and just have fun and play every day for a couple of hours. And from obviously moving from Australia, being with my beautiful fiance here, and I'm super happy here in California. And I also miss that part of being back at my previous home. And so I saw a video yesterday, and I was like, oh damn, I wish I was with the guys back there and be tearing it up and be having fun. And I train a lot on my own at the moment, and that's okay. I go through these cycles, right? And at the same time, it's just a little. It's a day, 2 days, a few days. I might be feeling like this, and then next week I'll be fine. But at the moment, I'm feeling a little bit isolated in that respect. And so, and because I'm serving a lot, I'm not allowing myself to have much fun and play. My own personal patterns, I'm becoming a little bit disheartened. So I was training this morning on my own, and I was thinking, you know what? I've got a really good life. Let me just check this and really drop in for a moment. Like, really feel how amazing my life is, because I seem to be focusing a little bit too much to the point where it's affecting my sense of well-being on what's, quote unquote, not working in my life. And so I went through what I'm really, really deeply grateful for right in the moment. The fact that the blue sky was out, sun was shining, I'm outside training, amazing. My beautiful fiance Christine was in the gym just next to me doing her own thing, thinking, wow, I have someone that cares about me so much, that looks after me in so many different ways, that sees me non-judgmental ways, that has shifted the way I see myself because of how she sees me, has been a beautiful mirror of compassion. The opportunities that I have access to. This conversation, Rosie, would not be taking place if I was not here in the US. And
Mm-hmm.
so many amazing things. I'm giving you a couple of examples, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas before, go back, rewind a few years, I'd wallow in my pain and my misery and my victimhood for so long. I'm talking about days and weeks sometimes. It was shocking.
Mm. I mean, it's such a visceral visual that you just painted because it really is about elevating
Yeah.
that frequency, right? I mean, that's essentially what you're saying. You're able to elevate yourself out of that frequency. It's like feelings like FOMO or
Yeah.
depression or sadness or feeling inadequate. Those are all operating at a lower frequency, and
Yeah.
so the idea then is to rise above it and be able to do it. And so for the people listening, they hear this all the time, right? So this is the it's almost like the simplest fix is always the easiest, right?
Yep.
It's always the easiest thing. But what do you think it is about getting to a place where we can elevate ourselves that blocks us?
So what blocks us from elevating ourselves?
Yeah.
A number of things. So, firstly, our environment, who
Mm.
and what we're spending our time with, what we're focusing on, what we're bringing our attention to. If there's density in what we're bringing our attention to, we're going to feel and experience density. I was watching, the show Suits.
Yes.
The TV. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So
Yeah,
Christine and I
yeah.
have been getting into it, and there was I think we're in season 8, so we're the last season, and one of the first couple of episodes. We watch it whenever we can. We haven't actually watched it for a week or two, so I think we're due. But just you reminded me, thank you.
Perfect. Perfect.
And so one of the characters says to Jessica, her partner says, "Congratulations, you'll be the first person to sleep with dogs and not get fleas." And I thought, wow, that's a really cool statement with respect to how much our environment influences us. I think that's massive. And so we have to be very selective and conscious and aware of who are we spending our time with and why. And what are we spending our time with? What are we focusing on in our day, in our conscious waking states? I think that's very important. So, for example, if you are a lawyer and you hate the law profession and you're dealing with, say, criminals all day, how is that going to affect you if you really dislike your job or your service or your vocation and you're not passionate about it and you're not inspired by it? That's going to affect the psyche compounded day after day after day. The second thing I want to say is, and this is an Ayurvedic principle, prevention over curative. Always preventative over curative. What does that look like? That means establishing routine in our lives that
Mm-hmm.
serve us. So for me, I have a series of morning habits and evening habits that lend themselves to ultimately grounding me, bringing me into focus, and allowing me to expand on a regular daily basis. Expansion means for me, am I learning something new? Am I contributing to the world in a meaningful way? And am I growing because of that? As an example of what I mean by grounding, or what I mean by creating substance in one's life, in my
Mm-hmm.
life.
Yeah.
And so I'm very happy to go through some of those morning habits, or all of them, and the evening habits as well, if you like. And we can come back to that later if you want. I definitely won't forget. Or we can continue just going where we are.
Yeah, no, I like that. I mean, we can go into so many different directions, but I think if you could just, give the listeners a definition of what grounding means, and then if you could just tell us what your morning ritual is.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. So for me, grounding is coming from a place where I'm not reactive and I'm more responsive. So I'm more cohesive and I'm patient with what I'm experiencing. So if I'm experiencing difficulty or challenge or pain, and let me just caveat something, sometimes I'm very reactive, but if I'm experiencing highly reactive, uh, where I'm immediately slipstream back into old patterns of frustration, agitation, and aggression, and that's an undoing, or a reckoning that I'm coming to terms with. But it's very rare these days. It's rarer than what it used to be, that's for sure. And so for me, being grounded is being able to be responsive and not panic in the face of difficulty. Being quite stoic in the approach. And so what that would tangibly look like is taking a few deep breaths, calming myself and asking myself, what is here for me to learn? How can I grow through this? What's the advantage of where I'm actually at? This difficulty that I'm experiencing, the fact that my laptop touchwood hasn't worked for 2 days and I can't access important information. How can I actually grow from this? What is it teaching me? What is it giving me?
Yeah.
That type of tangible approach.
Yeah.
And so grounding for me, and I really honor and I'm very appreciative of what you said before we got on about the way my voice is. And it's okay, it's my accent, it's my vocal cords and the structure of my esophagus and all that stuff, or whatever contributes to me vocalizing. But it's also a mindset that I take. It's also how I
Mm.
choose to be in life as often as I can, which is being calm, being slow, literally slowing my thoughts and what I'm observing down so I can absorb it all. And that's a practice. I never used to be like that. I was very fast paced. I was very erratic. I was what's on the next thing. I was part of my personality per se was being hyper selfish. What's in it for me? And so I'm constantly chasing. It's like that the extreme consumerism model. What's next? What's next? I've got the latest phone, but when's the next phone coming out? I've got the latest TV. When's the next TV coming out? That type of rampant consumerism. I was the same with experiences. I just wanted more and more and more. And so I wasn't grounded. I was very reactive to life,
Mm-hmm.
and not reactive in a healthy way. It was, hey, I'm in a survival mode and I need to be reactive to survive. It was just everything was a survival scenario. And that's
Mm-hmm.
just not healthy because it was wreaking havoc with my nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's what for me grounding means. I hope
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, no,
explained it pretty.
that's a great definition because I can absolutely relate. And so in the morning when you wake up, what is the rundown of your morning to really establish that?
Yeah, yeah. So if I'm with my beloved, it's spending some quality time.
I'm just smiling
And
so big right now.
yeah,
Just like I
yeah,
love it and I love her. Christine Hassler, for
yeah.
those of you that don't know
She's the
who
best. She's
who
the
the
best. She's the
beloved
best.
is.
She's the best.
Yes.
Spending some time with her, whether it be just cuddling, eye gazing, smiling, even none of the above, just a touch on the shoulder, letting her know that I'm there, whatever it may be. Um, Toilet, and I mean I'm very serious. Toilet time. So Christine was telling me a story yesterday of someone that she knows that goes to the toilet like once every like, and when I say toilet, I'm talking about number two.
Yeah.
Is like once every 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm like, what the
What?
fuck? And I know people that have done, that have been that person as well, and I could never imagine that. It's just I would I don't know that for me that would be I would be on high alert if that's
That's like
happening.
toxic, right? I mean,
Very
that's
toxic.
like,
Yeah,
oh,
of course it
that's
is.
not
Yeah,
good.
absolutely. In so many ways. And so toilet time for me in the morning is a conscious part of my routine, and it's neural. It happens. I have no issues with it. It just happens. Drinking 1 to 2 tall glasses of water, filtered water. Very grateful. I wake up every morning. I walk upstairs, and I see this amazing mountain vista view that we have, and I think, wow. And sometimes we can see Big Bear when the day's really clear. I can see Big Bear in the distance, white snow-capped mountains, so clear, so close.
Mm.
And I'm so grateful. And I drink my water, and then I come back downstairs, and I'll engage in some Christine, I'll engage in some breath work practice, and then some stillness practice. And I usually extend my stillness practice, and I'll just continue that. And then generally part of my morning routine as well will be do some reading with respect to whatever I'm reading at that point. Um, some I haven't done writing for a while. I go through phases. I go through different stages. I haven't been writing for a while, but reading at the moment I'm doing more reading,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll do some reflective work as well on the day before and what I want my day to look like and feel like,
Mm-hmm.
and then movement. So it could be yoga, it could be a long walk, it could be generally my training is quite intense. This is high intensity training. Um, and that's my morning. They're my morning routines, and then I go deeper into my day with service and work and whatever that looks like. But generally, that's my morning routine, and really clear that a great evening routine sets up a very solid and connected morning routine as well. And I'm far better at my morning routine than I am in my evening routine. But I will go into but I will go into my evening routine, which is good, and we keep each other accountable. Christine and I keep each other accountable, which is good. But basically, if we're watching television or if we're watching a series or a movie or a show or whatever it may be, if we're not working or if we're not connecting or doing whatever else we're doing, TV's off by 9:30 at the latest. Reading and then bed by 10:30, 11 at the latest.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Yeah,
that's nice.
yeah.
What are you like if you don't get your morning ritual in?
I'm okay over a longer period of time. I get cranky. Cranky word we use here in the US.
Yeah, cranky. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I get cranky. Yeah,
Yeah,
because I'm not honoring myself, and so I
right.
get pissed.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
get. I'm
Yeah.
like a little kid. I
Yeah, no,
just
me
lost.
too.
Yeah,
Totally. And that was my question. I always like to ask people
yeah.
that I have respect for and that I feel like are enlightened. And I'm like, "Are you?" Because I feel like I have so much work to do. I mean, I don't actually know what it's like to not do my morning ritual, but there's certain things that I may have to omit because of my schedule or travel or whatever, or if I'm on an airplane, like and I am not a great person, in the morning. Like I swear it's really terrible. I am not I'm like a hangry little beast. Like It is not a good look. And, I'm sure it, has a lot to do with just wanting to arrive into this plane, right? Just to arrive
Yeah.
into the
Yeah.
world and to just, you come out of this peaceful state of sleep,
Yeah.
I mean, I have pretty good sleep. And so
So
I'm
do
coming out of this serenity and this feeling of just fullness, and then I awake, and then if I don't do my things, I just feel so disconnected, you
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And so okay, well, talking about connection, um well, actually, no, I want to ask you, I want to go back to something that you
Mm.
said. One of the things you said earlier was about how our environment is conducive to us being able to elevate to a higher state of being, right?
Yes. Yes.
What do you do if you have toxic people in your life or in your environment? Like, you have a friend that's a little bit of a Debbie Downer, or
Mm.
if you have somebody at work that you sit next to that's kind of a
Mm.
drag, or you have a partner that's maybe not into self-development as much as you are.
Yeah.
Like, what do people do? What's your advice for them
Mm.
if they're in that position?
Yeah. So the short answer, and I don't mean to be facetious here, is remove those people from your life. Now,
Mm-hmm.
that's not the easiest answer always, and it's not necessarily the answer that's required 100% of the time. So let's backtrack a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
If that person or those people are consistently very negative in your life, or for lack of a better term, toxic, unhealthy in their behavior, how they treat you, how they see you, how they view you, the exchange that you have, the interpersonal relationship that's transpiring. If that's consistent, at some point you'll have to make a decision to remove yourself or remove them from your life.
Mm-hmm.
And what that looks like is really dependent on the circumstances. But there's generally two ways to approach this. Then there's obviously what happens behind the scenes. The first way is what I just said there, and there's no particular order. The second way is to adjust to our environment. In other words, we remain. Well, there's actually three ways. So the second way is adjust to our environment and be able to see the lessons and the teaching and the wisdom and the gratitude and the what's actually unfolding here.
Mm-hmm.
And how can you make it work for you as opposed to against you? And how can you move out of a victimhood mentality? And that requires effort, that requires communication with that person, requires communication with self, really understanding what your needs are with clarity, learning how then to express that and communicate that and come from a place of compassion, non-judgment as often as possible, and healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
And say, hey, how you're behaving is not acceptable. It's hurting me and it's upsetting me for A, B, and C. And if it continues, this is what's going to have to happen, because it's not fair that that's transpiring. I'm giving you an example
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and the third way is do nothing about it and continue to suffer, and essentially just be grounded in low self-esteem, low self-worth, and low self-value and low self-belief.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the third option is not an option that I recommend to anyone, because
Right.
clearly, because all you're doing is perpetuate. is, yeah, but so many people do that though, right, Rosie?
Yeah,
I'm
you're
sure you can
absolutely
think of
right.
people.
Oh, 100%.
I've done that in the past when when I was younger, when I was a young teenager, and I was passive and I was very meek in my own self and didn't trust myself, believe in myself, have a voice. I would allow that to transpire. I would be bullied, and I would let that transpire. And I wouldn't remove myself from those events. I would just stay there, and I would still cop the abuse, because for me that was the norm. I grew up in a volatile environment where I experienced physical abuse and emotional abuse from my father,
Mm-hmm.
and my mother to an extent as well. And that was the norm, is being able to take that, and how strong I was defined by how much pain I could tolerate. That
Mm-hmm.
changed as I moved into my later teens and adulthood, where I became the opposite in extremes. I had to oscillate through extremes. I became hyper aggressive, and I became very angry in the world and very abrupt and rude, and like a sledgehammer, essentially. If
Mm.
someone teased me, or if someone disagreed with me, or if someone said something that I didn't like, I was on them, either emotionally, or would be punching on, fighting if it was on the street or something. Literally, it
Wow.
was it was extremes. And so I don't recommend that at all. Definitely not. We have the capacity to learn from indirect experience. Let's please people who are listening, don't go
Right.
down that route.
Right, right.
It's
Don't
not
do
fun.
that.
Don't
Okay.
do that. Don't do that. What you can do though is get really clear. I think the second options as a starting point is really powerful, because It teaches you about you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you actually reflect on, okay, so what's happening here and how can I deal with this situation the most amicable way, realizing that it may not end up amicable, but how do I set healthy boundaries, start from a place of compassion and non-judgment, start from a place of seeing the other person and maybe that they're in pain and that they're suffering and they don't know how not to project that. And so is it actually about me? Oh, maybe it's not. Maybe my actions are actually in integrity, or maybe, wow, I can see where my actions are in integrity. If I made this adjustment, this may change the way they interact with me,
Yeah.
perceive me, see me, or treat me. Let me
Mm-hmm.
try that. And so it becomes this exploration. And of course, as we know, exploration is a beautiful segue into enlightenment, into a nirvana, into greater sense of peace and even self-worth. And so I recommend the second route that I mentioned, which was
Yeah.
really go in, like go all into that and ask, why is this happening for me? And what action can I take that's different to what I have been doing to observe a different way that I can be treated as opposed to being treated in unhealthy, aberrant ways?
Yeah. Oh, I love that stuff so much. I have a question for you. I'm curious if
Yeah.
you've encountered this. This is kind of a little bit, it's not really off topic. I guess it coincides with what you're talking about. Have you ever encountered people that you've worked with, as a coach, as a transformational advocate that you are, um, somebody who like wants to get better, but not for real. Does that make sense? It's almost like they're doing all the things, but they really don't want to change. I call it like the faux self-development, right? It's
Hmm.
like somebody that maybe you've given all the advice to, you've given all the tools, but they're just not doing it. Have you ever encountered that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
What do you what,
Massively.
yeah, what do you do? I mean, do you just
I've
say,
been that person too.
"Yeah, me too. I totally
Yeah.
have too." Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Like, what do you do in that situation?
I think the most important thing is to realize that we cannot change or shift anyone until they are really willing and wanting to shift.
Mm,
However, I remember having this conversation with my mother years and years ago, in my early 20s, maybe even in my teens. I've been I've had quite a philosophical mind or an inquisitive mind from a very young age.
mm-hmm.
I remember having this conversation, and we were talking about you can't change people, and should that stop us from not trying to change them, but still stepping into our power and just being ourselves and not being attached to whether someone else changes or not, but just leading our lives the way we want to lead our lives, uh, and really being detached from an outcome of how others behave. And I thought to myself, you can hear things 1,000 times, the same thing. And on the 1,001th time, you go, oh, wow, I'm going to make a change. And you make it and it's done. And it's like your mother will say to you, well, I've been telling you that for years. Well,
Mm-hmm.
why haven't you done that? Because we're just not ready to change.
Mm-hmm.
But without those 1,000 times that you heard it, would that 1,001th time even make a difference? Potentially not.
Right.
Am I making sense with what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah.
totally makes sense. It really has to do
Mhm.
m- uh, more with your preparation, right? Like
Yes.
one of my teachers, and you'll love this. He, again, it's we're both students of Vedanta and yoga and all these Eastern philosophies that I find absolutely fascinating. But one of the things that my teacher says that I really love is there's that saying that when you're ready, the teacher will
Yes.
appear. But he says when the student is prepared,
Yes.
then
Oh,
the teacher will appear.
it's a relationship. One doesn't exist without the other. Teacher doesn't exist without student. What's there to teach if there's no student?
Right.
And how can a student exist without a teacher? So it's relational. They're reliant on each other. And so that's the beautiful thing. So go back to your original question. Can we just be ourselves and really show up fully and not be attached to how others behave or not behave? Now, if it gets to a point where we revert back to the previous discussion around if someone's behaving unhealthily, we may have to remove ourselves, or we
Mm,
can go deeper into that and attempt to reliven the relationship, rekindle the relationship if there's something worth rekindling there. But that comes down to our own personal values our own perception of if it's worthy or not. But we can't change people. If people aren't ready for those tools, then they won't accept them. And that doesn't mean that we can't get creative if we see that there's value in persisting. I'm a big fan of persistence, big fan of persistence. And the intention behind persistence is very important. If you're persisting because your ego says, I have to change this person, and you're coming from a hyper selfish place that you want them to change because it's going to solely benefit you, I believe that that intention is not in integrity, and it's not really useful to the well-being of the other person. But if you're saying, hey, I really have something to offer, and I understand that this person will only change when they're ready, and maybe they don't need to change right now, but maybe they just need to be loved and nurtured and cared for and seen, and even just they just need to know that they're actually really someone actually is interested in them and in their development. And so I can get creative how I present that. Maybe instead of talking to them, I'm going to write them a letter and tell them about this amazing new course that I've started, and maybe they may be interested. Because if they were to read a letter, that's a very different form of communication than talking on the phone or via text or in person. So that in and of itself, that shift is like a shock factor. And so we know with immersive experiences, we receive a shock factor, we're more inclined to shift or transform or change or see something that we've seen before with new eyes, in a new way, new perspective. And so just something simple like that.
Yeah.
Now we can get creative. I have clients all the time that are reluctant to go forward or go into the pain. And it's not because they don't want to or they want to be difficult or they're stubborn or they're egotistical. It's because their pain is too much. It's because that they're so fearful. I have to be creative in how I get them there. And sometimes it takes 1 session, 2 sessions, 3 sessions. Sometimes it takes me just talking about completely irrelevant stories, and I tap into the unconscious parts of their psyche to prepare them for going and facing their fears. Sometimes we have to look at different pain points that aren't as intense to prepare them for this greater pain point. Either way, I've learned I've needed to be creative, and my intention is to always serve them in the best way. And if they're not ready to go into that pain right now, I'm not going to push that, over push it. I'll gently nudge, sometimes more. And this is contextual because obviously this is a mentoree dynamic.
Yeah.
But even with friends, we have to respect the other person's sovereignty and individuality. I think if we come from that place, being creative, respecting their sovereignty and individuality, not coming from a place of ego, the intention is to serve, I think then, you know what? You'll figure out what answer you need and what action you need to take in order to help them or maybe not help them shift.
I love that. That's so true, and I really love that you're articulating that in a way that's doable.
Mm,
It's not really like asking, well, I mean, in a sense, you are asking for people to get out of their own comfort zone, and sometimes it takes
yes.
both people getting out of that comfort zone to achieve a new level of understanding and awareness. So I love that you're saying that. Who in your life has been your greatest teacher?
Oh, um, well, I've got a couple of tears in my eyes, and so the first person um, that came to my mind was my first two people, my grandparents that have passed away, who I miss dearly, and I love dearly,
Mm,
and so they're the two people that have immediately come to me, and then so my body, the visceral reaction was tears in my eyes because I thought of my grandparents and how amazing they are as human beings, and I could run a long list of people, Christine being one of them. My parents, albeit having many different, having not been the best parents, so to speak, they also were. They taught me so much. Once I was able to move past and all the pain of it, my brother, some of my greatest friends, and some amazing teachers, swamis that I've learned from, and just so many. The list goes on. So many people in my life, but to do justice and honor to your question, the first people that came to mind followed very quickly by Christine, of course, and all previous partners have taught me so much. My grandparents have been massive catalysts for being able to tap into more authentic aspects of myself, more core aspects of myself that I want to bring into the world, such as selflessness and compassion and certainty and security and predictability in self. Like my grandfather and my grandmother were predictable. in terms of they showed up a particular way and they honored that way. They were really in integrity with who they were. Um, and that for me is a beautiful quality for any human being. And so it's not exclusive to men, but for men, for me, particularly because I'm a man, being in integrity, being a beacon of safety and certainty when others are interacting with you is really important for me. And something that I have worked on diligently over many years to be that person.
Mm, I
Yeah.
love that stuff. Such a beautiful answer. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. Um, I'm not sorry that I made you cry.
I'm not sorry that you made me
Okay,
cry.
good. What is your definition of freedom?
Oh, I love this. I love this. For me, freedom is access. I'm going to elaborate on that. And it's access to knowing that we are consistently and actually constantly free. And it's our minds that entrap us. I have been a prisoner of my own mind for so long. I was so fearful of commitment. I was so fearful of losing my freedom
Mm,
in a cultural context, whether it be in relationship or getting a loan or a mortgage or being involved in businesses, being accountable to other people. I saw everything as restricted. Everything was restricting me, was restricting my movement. Not having enough money to do what I want was restricting. Therefore, I wasn't free. Everything for me was not liberating, and all I wanted to do was escape this world and go into the mountains and meditate and detach from the world. And I realized that that's not really what I want to do. And I was running from my pain and my fear. And when I went into that, when I went into my fears and my pains and my past wounding and my trauma, and I neutralized and equilibrated that, I felt free. I feel free. Even when I feel that I'm in dire straits, I can connect to actually feeling free. It's more difficult when I'm in a painful situation or when I'm stressed or overwhelmed or experiencing stress or overwhelm, but I can still access it. I could have never been in a relationship before and be so comfortable. I feel more free than I ever have being in a committed relationship now, being in an intimate romantic partnership now, because I've changed my internal frameworks and I've really gone into myself and chosen and have been willing to look at the fears that have stopped me from feeling free, essentially.
mm. That is so beautiful, Steph. Thank you. Um, I created this podcast as a way for people to come to get inspired or to just hear stories of how other people have felt supported, and maybe they are looking for a little bit more support. And the idea
Mm,
is that we are radically loved by God, source, universe, whatever higher power of
mm,
your understanding, that the universe works for us and not against us.
mm,
And
mm,
so the final question to you
mm.
is, how do you feel radically loved?
Oh, that's a really beautiful question. I was actually going to, it's intuitive of you. I was actually going to ask you if I could go back a moment and speak to something I wanted to elaborate on. And I actually don't need to now because, well, I will, but I don't have to ask you that because the segue of the question actually goes directly to that. And so, earlier when I mentioned my grandparents, they laid a tremendous foundation. Once I cleared up a lot of my internal clutter, my psyche and my emotional being, my spiritual self, and got into a deeper contact with who I truly was, I was able to really realize and embrace the impact that my grandparents had on me and the foundation they laid for me to be able to receive. They loved me so much, myself and my brother, so unconditionally. Never experienced anything like, no matter what you did to them or I did to them or anyone would do, they were so loving and open, and they just knew what they loved, and they loved ferociously and beautifully, and just with such peace as well. And that for me laid the foundation to receive that, coupled with doing the inner work, laid the foundation for me to receive the love that I received from my beloved, from Christine, like I've never received before. She sees me in such a compassionate, non-judgmental way. And because I've been so open to the way Christine sees me and witnesses me, I've been able to also recognize in the past how people have seen me that I haven't been able to accept or embrace or allow into my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to answer your question, I'll just use Christine as a catalyst because I really feel that intimate romantic love, in whatever form it takes, can take us so deep within ourselves. And it's a catalyst and a mirror for looking into who we are. And what I realize is, and what Christine helps me realize is, just by being her and the way she sees me, is how much radical love and acceptance and compassion I actually have for myself.
Mm.
And that's been a really beautiful journey for me, and also one that's come with massive challenges because I play hard in the realm of masculinity, and what masculinity is and what it isn't, and what it was and what it can be and where it's going and all of that. And so I wrestle with so many different concepts within myself and conceptually, academically as well, and at a societal level. And at a futuristic level, the future of society, the future of relationships, the future of masculinity, the future of bonding and sacred union and all of that. And so it's been an unraveling journey, but that radical self-love and that radical love receiving from people that truly see me, devoid of judgment and just full of compassion, has been fucking epic, to say the least.
Oh my goodness, that's well put, Steph, and I want to just take a moment to say how much I appreciate you and the work that you're doing, and just
Thank you.
your ability to just show up fully and wholeheartedly as somebody who's wanting to, raise the level of awareness in different aspects of life, and to just be in full integrity and authenticity and honesty. And I really love that about you, and I pray that more men continue to follow you and follow your example, because I feel like it will create such a better world for us to create a sustainable community.
Oh, thank you very, very much for your kind words. I've very much received and appreciated.
Oh, I'm so glad. So for the people that are listening that want to get to know you more, or that want more information about you and what you do, where can they go for that?
Best place is social media, Instagram or Facebook. Stefanos Afandos are my handles, and you'll find so much information there.
Yeah,
My
and
websites, all of that is there. Yeah.
for the people listening to the podcast, all of those links will be provided in the show notes of this particular podcast. So if you go to the info section that you're listening to and you click the info button, all of those links will be there, so you can follow Steph and let him know what you thought about this episode. Steph, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you, and I hope that I get to see you and Christine soon, and we can hang
Yes,
out and just talk about all things
that'll be amazing.
radical love.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I am so excited to continue to do this. Please share this with your friends. Email us, message us on Instagram at Rosie Acosta, or on Twitter at Rosie Acosta. Subscribe on iTunes, write a review. We love doing this, so please help us continue to keep this podcast going. Thanks for listening.